Hello everyone, my name is Anina, or Miss Kang on Tumblr. I'll be talking about project-based learning / problem-based learning in the middle school classroom. For the past 2 years, I've been working as a science teacher at a new tech school, which means we've been using one-to-one technology and problem / project-based learning exclusively. So what is project-based learning? So the main resource I've used here is the Buck Institute for Education, BIE.org. I highly recommend if problem-based learning is something that you want to use, project-based learning, that you visit this website. Essentially, PBL is student-driven learning through the form of a project. So instead of having, PowerPoints and notes, and then you take a test at the end of the unit, the students are creating a project of some form. And all their learning is done in the work that leads up to the project. So it should be, in the best form, completely student-driven. And you as a teacher are simply facilitating the process, guiding them through the process, making sure that they get all of the standards in by the time that they get to the end and complete their project. So here's some of the key vocabulary we'll be using. Most of the things I'll be saying are in here. I'm going to refer to project-based learning as PBL from now on, just because it's shorter. Problem-based learning is PBL, just shorter time frame. Okay, it's more problem solving. So I'll go over that later on. Okay, so how to best use PBL. This is starred because this is my opinion. Okay, this is not Buck Institute. This is not New Tech Network. This is just me. I think ideally, if you are choosing to do PBL, like your school doesn't mandate that you have to do everything PBL. For younger students, and for students who are new to it, once or twice a year. For older students, once or twice a semester. I think they can handle that much. Considerations, are they doing projects for other subjects? Now, ideally, if you are doing PBL, try to get as many subjects in on it as possible. So collaborate with the English department or collaborate with the math department. Even going into electives, like collaborate with music or PE, to kind of take a little bit of load off the students so they're working on the project in multiple classes. A well-rounded project should take 3 to 4 weeks. Anything less than that tends to get very rushed. I did many 1 week and 2 week projects just because that's how time worked out. Very rushed. Anything longer than that, I had a monster like 6 or 7 week project, and the kids just get bored. I mean, I did everything I could to kind of mix it up, change it up, but they get bored, especially middle schoolers. For problem-based, I would say max a week, simply for time purposes. You have so many standards to get through. You really don't want to spend more than a week on these because you can only do maybe 1 or 2 for problem-based at a time. So this is the format that I'm going to be going in terms of how I'm going to talk about a project. This is essentially the order that the students will follow as well. These are all things that you're going to incorporate in there, and I'm going to do my best to kind of explain what each of those are. So the entry event can be anything that engages the student, captures their attention, and at the same time gives them the information that they need as to what they have to accomplish in the project. In the project briefcase, that's what we call it in school. In the file folder, you will see I put a letter in there. Most of the entry events I've seen have been letters, okay? they're, written from some company asking the students to accomplish some task. Some, other examples of entry events. We did one with the 8th graders this year where it was kind of the scenario of that TV show Revolution, where all the technology stopped working. So the assistant principal, I got her on board and she came in, turned off all the lights and, posed explained to the students that there was no technology, how would they keep track of time, etc., etc. So you can make it more engaging and hands-on and get other people involved, make videos, things like that. But ultimately, it needs to provide the students information. The reason why letters are nice is because it's something physical for the students to look at and for you to go through with them. The driving question in the problem statement, I just want to briefly say that the driving question is your enduring understanding, which is why it's kind of vague. And then the problem statement is specific to the project that you're doing. So in this case, the students, as you can tell from the entry event, hopefully you go and read that letter, they have to repopulate an island. In order for them to do that, they have to understand the different layers, if you will, of a food chain, looking at producers and consumers and different levels of consumers, and determine, what's the most logical, sustainable way to repopulate this island. Okay. Knows and needs to knows. So these need to be completely student generated. As the students read the entry letter, and with middle schoolers, I highly recommend, even, if they've done 5 or 6 projects, I still recommend going through the entry event with them. Like sentence by sentence, word by word, helping them pick out the vocabulary words, helping them pick out those little breadcrumbs of, hey, this piece of information in here is really important. I'm going to need this in order to do my project. In the example of this one, the area of the island is extremely important. The number of kilocalories in one, I believe it was square mile, is extremely important. The kids are going to look at those numbers and completely ignore them until they get into the project and realize, hold on, I need to figure out how much energy there is on the island in the first place. So help your kids, determine what is it that they know already about ecosystems, okay? What do they know already about producers and consumers? Help them get to those vocabulary words. And then if they don't know them, have them ask the questions. These are the need to knows. Why is it important for me to have different levels of consumers on this island? And so on and so forth. So the students should be generating their need to knows as things they need to know in order to accomplish what is being asked of them in the project. All right, group dynamics. With your middle schoolers, I highly recommend making the contract for them and making the roles of the group for them. In the folder, I have the Buck Institute's example of what a contract should look like. They're pretty straightforward. The students sign off on them, and they do have to follow the contract during the course of a project. There are processes to fire students from the group. It gets very chaotic. If you have questions about that, definitely just message me. I don't want to get into all of that. But it keeps the students responsible, and it keeps them accountable for each other. With students who are more experienced with PBL or older, you can have them write their own contracts. With my students, once they got comfortable with it, I would hand each group a completely blank sheet of printer paper, and they would create the entire contract on their own. It didn't really become an issue. Same thing with roles. It's good to kind of split responsibilities amongst the group members. For this project, we had a biologist, ecologist, zoologist, and mathematician. The roles don't necessarily have anything to do with their title. It was just equalized titles. The students like to have a leader. I try to make things kind of equal for them, and they're like, okay, that's cool, but who's the leader? So it's up to you as to how you want to run it. So yes, and have the students kind of stick to what their role is. Definitely encourage them to help each other as part of collaborating, as part of just working well with others. But it's good to give them a sense of responsibility within the project. Okay, so rubric. The rubric should be specific enough for the students because this is what they're using to see what is it the teacher expects from me in the final project. Now you'll notice another star, and that's because they as in Buck and New Tech, say that the rubric shouldn't be a checklist. Okay, you don't want to, have specifically written out, you must have this, 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 and this, because then there's not a lot of creativity in that. I have found, though, the products are so much better if I break that rule. So I have given rubrics that essentially are checklists, like each column. So this is what a rubric would look like, this kind of chart format. And I don't use below standard. I just use like, this is where I would start as C level work and work my way up. And I would break down, this is what I expect to see for you to pass. In a project like this, like you should have your food pyramid, a food chain, your calculations of the different animals that you chose and how many calories they need and all of that. And then work my way up as to, what students could add to push their project to the next level. Even taking it into, bonus points if you want to. Now you'll notice that this specific rubric is actually a collaboration rubric. 21st century skills, the students should be graded not just on content, but on their collaboration skills, critical thinking skills, whatever skills your school has decided to focus on, you need to be grading as well. How you grade those is up to you/your school principal. At our school, we as a campus, as a district actually, decided, what are we looking for in terms of good collaboration from our students? What are we looking for in terms of good critical thinking or work ethic from our students? And then definitely incorporate that rubric into your specific rubric for the project. A lot of schools tend to do separate rubrics. I like to just put all the rows in one sheet of paper. It's easier for the students to see that way. And it also helps them see, which skills are being graded on as well. Workshops. This is where your scaffolding and differentiation come into play. So you can do workshops, which is basically your old school notes, in whichever way you want. I have done large group ones, especially with my 6th graders, where I know that all of them needed help with a topic. The entire class will look through a PowerPoint and watch videos and take notes. For your more advanced students, advanced as in like your older students or simply students who are used to PBL, I would put resources online for them to look at and kind of self-teach. And then, so when I go with that method, what I would say is maybe like halfway through class, I would announce, okay, at this point you should have looked at the resources that were on there. If you still have questions about it, come see me. I'm going to have a workshop in 5 minutes. And then I would be in a corner of the room and basically do a mini lecture for those students who needed extra assistance or more personalized assistance. So those are voluntary workshops for the students. that takes a lot to work up to with middle schoolers, because it's not just they need to